You're listening to the Devil Dog Talk Show.
This show contains explicit material and is recommended for ages 18 and older for mature audiences only. But hey, it's the internet.
Welcome to the Devil Dog Talk Show. Today we have Terrence White of MONKO, a luxury brand of cannabis out in Washington, D.C. And I'm going to turn it over to Terrence for his introduction. Hey, Terrence, how are you doing today?
Hey, good. How you doing, Joey? Thanks for having me.
Thank you for spending some time with me. As you know, I had a little bit of difficulties right now, but glad to work through them and get to talking about you. That's what I like to hear about.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the opportunity. As you introduced me to your audience, I'm Terrence White, founder and CEO of MONKO here in Washington, D.C. I've been in the cannabis space now going on 4 years, and had a brick and mortar here in DC roughly for 2 years now. I got into the cannabis space after years of being in the real estate space, and so the opportunity presented itself as DC went through the unlicensed to licensed period. I served as the chairman of the I-71 committee, which I represented or was chairman of the I-71 compliance stores in DC who wanted to have a pathway to a license. So that was, a big portion, along with starting a luxury brand in cannabis. So it's been definitely a doozy as I try to continue to take this stitch and stigma off of cannabis, but also as my tagline says, luxury with a purpose, and that's being able to align different communities, whether it's social equity, the LGBTQ, the veterans community, all communities, and give them the experience that they would get in any luxury industry. So, from that side, I just want to embrace this opportunity to speak with you, Joey.
That is so awesome. Like, that was something that I was super excited about when Zoe was let me know a little bit more about the luxury space, because I've never shopped at a high-end store. I've never had the opportunity, either clothing or any kind of thing besides, a car or something like that I would say very high-end. So the type of experience she was explaining to me that we're looking at to experience there at MONKO with you out in DC is something that you would experience kind of like with the Gucci or the Prada. Like, you go in and the people are so knowledgeable of the different strains and effects, and just the whole space. I was looking at the pictures right now, is just absolutely gorgeous. So seeing something like that in the retail space, it's very intriguing. How did the topic of luxury and cannabis kind of come across, and how did you develop that business plan and then to an action where you're at now?
Well, it came down to branding, and I'm a luxury guy, and I brand myself even from the real estate world. Of the products that we put out, we always wanted it to have whether it was single family or condo units, we always wanted it to be a luxury feel. The caveat here is also making it affordable. And a lot of times people say, oh, you're luxury, you're high end, your price is too high. And then they come in and said, oh, you're very competitive. I wanted to take that stitch and stigma, the top off of cannabis on the West Coast. California, you guys have a 30-year leeway on the East Coast. Mm-hmm. And here there's such a stitch and stigma about, well, it stinks, it's this, it's that. So I wanted to niche myself going forward, knowing that the market changes. How can I brand? How can I make myself different from the next location? Number one, the experience, the ambiance, the aesthetics, they go hand in hand. And then we get to the education and knowledge of the products. And then we get over to the overall experience of all those things wrapped into one. And that allows me to separate myself from my competitors. And going forward, luxury with a purpose. Then there's the purpose side of this is saying, hey, I'm a returned citizen. I've been incarcerated, helping people of color not only get a pathway to a license, but maintaining a pathway to a license and getting the funding and doing the things that's necessarily to be part of that. And then engaging with other communities besides the Black and Brown community. How do I take neighborhoods that I'm in and bring them inside my location to give them this luxury experience, this purpose? So that's why I build the brand around. That's what I build the business model around. And, we've been successful. We got a lot of work to do, but continuing to grow in the brand and continuing to get the opportunity to speak about not those things, and I'm passionate about those things, and understanding that there's still a lot of work to do in this space. A lot of people still put a frown on their face when it comes to cannabis. So if they go into Gucci or Louis Vuitton versus Walmart or Target, it's a different experience. And that's what we
Exactly.
bring.
No,
And that's what
that's
we bring.
awesome. Now,
Yes.
when you guys bring that to the table, because especially where you're at in Washington D.C., you can definitely see the different types of social classes and even economic classes, right? Tying into that, both the disparity and, let's say, having that eye of equity and having that sense of purpose, do you find it difficult to bridge the gaps, let's say, between your common daily user medical patient to where you're seeing the luxury appeal, where yes, these are the higher end types of strains or the types of cultivars and cultivation, but it's the full ambiance and experience of that luxury breath, I would say. Again, I never had that experience, so I'm more intrigued by the turnaround on how does one get involved, and do you see it bridging the gaps that you set out to bridge? Is that something that you see happening, not necessarily on a day-to-day basis, but definitely with the stigmas of the culture of cannabis?
Well, I think that first of all, you have to engage yourself in the community. And once you can engage yourself so people can actually see the brand for what it is, and you have to be an outlier to the cause, and let people know that cannabis is number one from a medical perspective. It is good for your health, depending on what you have. With anything, if you abuse it, it's going to harm you. So awareness and education is number one. Number two is you have to position yourself in the community so that people can understand that although you're luxury, you're also real. And then the third factor is understanding your audience, whether it's medical, whether it's recreational, so that you can not only position yourself, but you can draw the bridge, as you say, between them and the next store or the next dispensary down the street. How do you separate yourself? And separating yourself is to understanding what that patient needs or what that consumer needs. And what we've done is we've done a great job of working with not only local partners, but also some national partners on making them aware that cannabis can be luxury, just like alcohol, just like the craft beer. It's also, but it's about positioning. How do I position myself? And we've done a great job working with our PR and our marketing team to get that message out. Luxury with a purpose. We've done veterans initiatives, LTG pride events. We work on every facet of what's needed so that the community can understand that, number one, we expose ourselves to you. We're here for you. And that's a big deal that we're in places that most cannabis stores or dispensaries are not.
See, that's huge. And you brought up actually two very big communities right now that people discuss, the LGBTQ plus group and, of course, the veterans community. I have this conversation with a lot of people about veterans, and it's really, if you can get it right within the veteran community, you can get it right in every community, because it represents every small and large niche group that you can really want to hit. And that's something that I find passionate about. I find veterans issues to be a huge deal for me. So when you bring up, you've worked with veterans organizations or people before, what type of work have you done in the veteran community with cannabis, and what does that look like to you? And how important is it to bridge the gap on, let's say, this modality of potential treatment?
Well, number one, the peel to plant thing is huge with me. I think that so many vets. I grew up. Matter of fact, Camp Lejeune is the land, which is a Marine Corps base in Jacksonville. It's the land that my forefathers owned, and that eminent domain was taken from my family. And
Wow.
so,
I'm just saying, because
so
I just had this conversation literally before we started talking about Camp Lejeune, and sorry to interrupt you, but it's just, that is so insane to hear, because I was stationed in Camp Lejeune many years ago,
so the
and
cemetery.
yeah,
So the cemetery on the base belongs to my family. And so the last name White, that is the cemetery on the base of Camp Lejeune. Um, my great grandfather, great grandfather, and his brothers own that land. So it, I grew up in New Bern, North Carolina, that sits between Cherry Point and Camp Lejeune, which you were aware of that because you were stationed down there,
yeah,
and the air station, Camp
right,
Lejeune being the biggest Marine Corps base, and Cherry Point being the biggest air station.
yeah, that is so
So
awesome.
So what I've been around the military all my life, family in the military. So that the pills to plant thing first it came. I got involved with a organization here called I-22,
Okay, I-22.
Initiative 22, which we give 22% off to every vet or person who served, or even a service member family. And we started doing small initiatives with them, awareness initiatives. So we're still working to grow that particular base and community,
Mm-hmm.
but but also I've also marched on the hill, with Peels to Plants. I'm a big advocate that we need to stop treating veterans with pills, opiates to be more factual. I'm a big advocate that cannabis helps. I'm an ex-football player. That's how college. That's how it led me to cannabis because my body would hurt. Um, and it took me a long time to smoke. Actually, I didn't start smoking until my 21st birthday.
Oh wow.
So, in from that standpoint, um, you know, I understand the value of number one, helping those who served, and thank you for serving. Um, but number two is educating our veterans that you don't need these pills. That there is a plant that is older. Um, some people say it's 4,000 years old. Some people say it's 2,000 years old. We know it was, some people say, before Christ. But what we do know, it has helped people heal their bodies from the inside out.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you inhale it, whether it's been a keef, whether tincture, peel form, however, a topical, but we do know that this plant works. So the education portion is huge. And so I've been working with Initiative 22 to educate more veterans, on how to wean themselves off pills, how to um, release anxiety, depression, PTSD, those type things. And then we go on to the LTG plus community. And a lot of those people have their own anxieties and their own fears. And so With that said, um, that's been a tremendous factor of working with organizations here. Mainly, one of my vendors who I actually met today was DC Freight, who does organized leagues for the Pride community, sports leagues, and how to position ourselves, how to help, how to take that stigma and stench, not only cannabis, but off their community
Yeah.
and how to align ourselves. So it's been rewarding, building the brand, but also building the perception that people know that, hey, it is luxury with a purpose, and that we drive this message of education, experience, opportunity, alliance. Those things are very, very key. And the last point is dealing with the social equity and inclusion and understanding how to get justice for people of color with the war on drugs, and how to, because less than 3% of the cannabis industry are made up of minorities. How do we position ourselves to win like our counterparts?
See, that's
So,
amazing that you bring that up. I just want to ask about that 3%, right? If
yes.
3% of it is the minority group, right? And you've brought up some very important discussion points about yourself and your heritage, which is very. I want to bring a point to it because you bring back, Camp Lejeune and the heritage, your family owning it, and eminent domain, and how the government positions itself, right? But also how certain communities position themselves throughout generations and different, I would say, capitalistic ventures. How would you say the rate of exchange, I would say, of the power of the dollar in the economy that is developing, that is cannabis? Is this going to be another one of those oil industries where, let's be honest, this is going to be predominantly white, wasps, or is this going to be an opportunity where not economy, but society has a good handle of equity and diversity within who we're looking at to provide these opportunities to?
Well, we hope that the latter. Um, we hope that this does not become a white dominant industry. And the only this is going to be left up to the states. Um, here in DC, social equity has been big, excuse me. But it cannot be achieved without justice. And I say that because you can give people all the licenses in the world, but if you don't give them the resources, the justice part, then it's not going to happen. Appropriations, reciprocity, however you want to chop it up, that's that's not going to happen. We're hoping that cannabis will allow people of color to have some generational wealth or some type of wealth. But as we all know, that with MSOs, multi-state operators, and we also know that once big pharma, big tech, big cigarette gets into this market more and more, it's going to drive the small mom and pops out. And if you don't brand and position yourself in order to win, it's a long-term play and something you have to have patience with, um, that you're going to get washed out. And how you position your brand and how you stabilize your community is how you're going to, it's either going to make or break you. So, that question is yet to be answered because number one, right now, what we're missing from the cannabis industry is institutional money because of banking. And number two, what we're also missing in the cannabis business is that there's no federal grants or funding behind it. So the people that usually gets left out are the first of DEI, diversity and inclusion. And if you don't know how to raise capital, if you never raise capital, if you don't have a business plan, if you don't have a business model, if you don't have these things, you're going to get washed away. And a lot of these big pharma, big tech, MSO people are just waiting to just gobble up or just say, hey, we got enough money to push them to the side.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, with MONKO and us growing our brand and us trying to do is how much market share can we own here in the District of Columbia? And there's a lot of challenges here in the District of Columbia. Number one being we've gotten a rider since 2014, not to make ourselves recreational, from a Republican congressman by the name of Andy Harris.
Okay, and now
Number two,
go ahead. Real quick, I just want to ask, what is that when we go back to it, though?
number two, and I'll answer that first, and then I'll go to number two.
Okay.
Andy Harris puts a rider on the budget that basically says that DC giving them not the right to include cannabis in their budget, the federal budget, because you have to understand DC is a territory. The United States Congress makes all decisions on DC politics that's passed by council and the mayor. Congress can supersede anything that they pass. If they put a rider on that bill, that means that that bill is non-void. That even though it has come up, it's been passed, but Congress has the last say so. And that rider is pretty much permitting or not allowing DC to be fully rec, even though that's how I-71 came about. So now what we've done here was a pathway to a license, but there's a medical license. So, you know, this rider by Andy Harris, who is a congressman from the eastern part of Maryland, is to prohibit the DC market from being successful. Meanwhile, the state of Maryland last year, in its first year of recreational, just came out and said that sales were over $1 billion, $1.1 billion to be exact.
And that's from Maryland.
That's from the state of Maryland. Maryland and Virginia is pretty much, you can throw a rock and you can be across the street in Maryland versus DC. You go across the bridge, you're in Virginia. So there's these things that has happened. So then the second thing is that DC is an 8.8 square mile territory. So the challenges of cultivation has been huge here because there's not a lot of warehouse space. So the other thing is most people know that DC can't get oversaturated like most states because the lack of spacing, the lack of facilities, even with the laws here with dispensaries. If you're 400 feet within another dispensary, you can't get a license. So, or playground. Those things matter. So there's obstacles here, not like most states or most territories. The thing is that these challenges allow you to think outside of the box. How can I control market share? Well, number one, I am luxury. I do bring an experience. I do bring education. But let's continue to do the purpose. Let's continue to do the grunt work, the things that's necessary. Let's continue to bring in all my apparel comes from Cambodia and recycle cotton, things like that. How do we derive or make a difference than our competitors? Well, number one, the store speaks for itself. The experience speaks for itself. The product speaks for itself. But we have to go outside the store. And then that's our purpose. That's our drive. That's how we build market shares. And that's how we communicate or connect mostly is the biggest thing. How do we connect with the communities or different communities that we just spoke about?
Exactly. No, and that's a beautiful experience to see developing.
It's a hard experience, but it's a needed experience. And when I got into this, I knew it was going to take me 2 to 3 years to build this. And I said, if I last 2 years, I'm going to win.
That's a solid perspective to keeping that optimism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing was, I knew that this was going to be a long-term play. This is not something short term, get rich overnight. I knew I wanted to grow the brand. I had my cultivation license. I wanted to be vertically integrated. I'm starting a cultivation called Pleasant Hill Wellness, which is, upper tier products, white label, private label products. But we'll be growing top flight cannabis. Our manufacturing, vapes, edibles, the same thing. Having that control and doing the right things to put in place, because the average median income in the District of Columbia is about $127,000 a year.
That's the average?
Yes.
Jeez. So that's a massive niche that you can fill, or niche.
Absolutely.
That's a perfect positioning
Yes.
to leverage, especially with that vertical integration of cultivation, and then just integrating it the way you have that. It's exciting because to me, I love the plant itself. I love the cultivation, the seeds. I love the way that you can really see all the different characteristics in a plant. It's a relationship with plants. I always say it is, because when I was going through the depths of it, right, coming, like you said, off of different pills that the VA prescribes you, and that's a very truth. That is a hard truth. You're given all these different medications. I myself was on morphine for more than 4 years. It was difficult, and getting off of it was even more difficult. And finding that new thing that would help even tampen a little bit of the pain response has been crucial. But interesting enough, having that experience too, where your anxieties can be addressed, because that's what it sounds like you're also introducing, is a reduced anxiety level. For a lot of dispensaries right now, they're high paced, kind of disgustingly so. You go in and it's like, I don't know if you're familiar with In-N-Out Burger out here. Have you been out?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you ever gone to an In-N-Out, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's always jam-packed with people. There's 100 things going on. There's a line out the door. There's a line out the parking lot for the driving. There's a billion things, and it's intense. To me, it's too much, right? But hearing that you have this luxury experience, I'm like, dude, I'm gonna get dressed up. Just to keep in with the appeal. I want to go check this out. I want to talk about perfect strains for me, right? That sounds super fun.
Yes.
Like to me.
and here's the thing. Here's the thing. I want you to come as you are, presentable, nevertheless. But what I want you to do is be able to engage with our staff, where they can help you get to, whether that's a full body high, whether it's, whether you need something to keep you up, whether you're looking for something for pain, if you don't smoke, or with vapes, with disposables, with edibles. And I want you to be able to understand that we're here not only in a luxury capacity, but in an education capacity.
See, and that's important to definitely hit your mark on too, because to me, coming in to this space at all in the beginning was very timid. Of course, my support system was very timid about it too. My wife comes from Mexico, where believe it or not, people don't do drugs down there. Okay, I know it's a misnomer, but a lot of Mexicans, they don't touch it, they don't discuss it. It's not open. My house growing up, my dad was a corrections officer, so I could just go on and on and on the different stigmas and the way that people perceive cannabis. So when I started using cannabis as my medical alternative, it did ruffle a bunch of feathers. So hearing that, you have this experience, it's a full-on purchasing, customer, patient, experience. But the most important part of that would be the education, right? To be able to go into a shop, have that comfort level of, the slower pace. I think that's the draw to a lot of those experiences, at least in my mind's eye, is the slower paced, higher end products, the better, the cream of the crop type of stuff. That's what I'm imagining here. And to be able to say, hey, like you brought up, is this a body high? Is this a mental lifting? Is it a euphoric? All those different questions to be answered. And especially for family, where they're like, hey, what's the legality of this, and it's cool that you guys are pushing the envelope forward with the recreational and all the different political stuff that you got going over in DC. Yeah, that's just awesome. I'm just
Yeah,
honestly awesome. That's just awesome.
and I appreciate you and the opportunity to actually let your audience know exactly what's going on. And as I grow and we try to think about going into other states and think about how to continue to position ourselves, I'm not here to water the brand down or whether the experience down. What we hear is to continue to bring the education component, the product component, but the experience component, that all three roll into one. And I think that with competitive pricing and continue to push the purpose, how do we continue to help communities of color, the pride community, the veterans community, or any community that feels left out, that you have a place in MONKO. Although luxury, you still have a place. And that's why I do make sure that we have competitive pricing so that we do not separate ourselves or be separatists to those who feel like, oh, this store is high end, but they're too high. Well, no, they're competitive.
Yeah.
They may be. So, and I get more value out of this store. I get more education versus going somewhere and you don't know what you're getting. So now your body's taking into something that's really not good for you.
Exactly. There's so much shit out there right now in this space too. In California alone, this was a point of conversation the other day with all the different guidelines and licenses that they themselves weren't even capable of updating and maintaining the records that they're holding all these different businesses to account, which is really bad when you're collecting taxes, of course, right? But in the DC space, it sounds like it's a very different atmosphere that where you can really focus in on the customer's experience and that entire educating and experiencing the I would say, like you're saying, the higher level of appeal. Where that's going to be a huge takeaway, especially like where I'm at in San Diego. Even parts of LA, just being able to carve out that type of customer experience for yourself, and then especially for the community as a whole. Because, man, I would love to, like I said, just sit down, walk into a store, which again, I'm looking at the pictures. It's a beautiful shop. I wouldn't even call it a shop. It's like like, I don't even know. It looks better than an Apple store. Like it does, like the layout and the layout and everything, the lighting. Like, I'm like, oh my God, this is gorgeous. This is like, hey, I would be like, if I'm not going to walk in with flip flops and a t-shirt,
oh, you can, and that's what I want you to walk in. I want you to be the best version of you walking into MONKO. And I don't want you to feel that it's stuffy. I want you to feel relaxed. I want you to understand that we're here to serve a community, but we're also here to take that stitch and stigma off. So this is why we build this. We took our neighborhood and we brought the neighborhood inside the store. And that allows people to feel comfortable. Now, for those who don't feel comfortable because they have this perception or this illusion, come on in. Allow us the opportunity to show you that we're different, but we're also human. And that's the reality of it, is making cannabis easy, allowing the plant to speak and not the human.
That's beautiful. Let the products talk for themselves. See, that's a perfect salesman right there. I tell you what, people. And that's exciting because with MONKO, you're bringing, like you said, just come as you are and enjoy the experience,
That's it.
Yeah.
I don't need you to
beautiful.
dress up. I don't need you. I need you to be the best version of you walking in, and the expectation have a free and clear conscience in mind and allow us to set that bar. Because once we right now, my retention rate is 67%.
That is mad decent, especially in that space.
Yes. So
Yeah,
I,
because
I,
most of the
I
time people are they're gonna pop off to every shop that's running a daily deal. That's usually what's going
that's
on.
that's it. But what if you look at my reviews, it's all around the experience, the exposure, the education. Um, and I can't speak highly enough on my staff, in the training and everything that we put from seed talent to happy operators to all these things that we position the staff to have this type of opportunity and show people that, hey, what we're willing to do is, number one, we educate our staff, we train them, not on the phone, on politeness, to take that bag and walk around the counter and give them the product and walk them out and thank them for their business. Just these little things, these little touches that the next dispensary or the next location is not doing, it goes a long ways. Thanking them from their business, following up 30, 60, 90 days, just a short memoir from us thanking you. I hope you're doing well. These things, these touch points, I speak about that all the time. Touch points.
Maintaining that follow up. See, that I think that's a beautiful thing you're bringing up, which is the follow up and the actual connecting with and building a rapport with your customer base. See, that's awesome. See, I'm excited.
Yes.
I don't even go to dispensaries for the most part, but I'm like, hey, this sounds like a whole experience. It sounds like something my wife would really get a kick off of. And she doesn't smoke or drink or anything like that. But I'm like, just sitting back and enjoying a different purchasing experience, right? I always find that interesting to me. Like I said, I've never gone to a luxury store. I think the most luxurious thing I've ever done for myself was buy a suit at the beginning of the year for my sister's wedding at the Men's Warehouse. So, I mean,
but whatever that experience was for you, I hope it was enjoyable. The thing is making this enjoyable, making it an experience. And then that's how we continue to separate. And we have to level set, but we also have to continue to lift the bar.
Yeah.
Because cannabis, so many people have so many negative connotations about cannabis.
That's true.
And it starts from our government, our policing, everywhere. The way that people think in general, they feel as though that this is, it stinks, it's this, and they've never given it the opportunity, because like everything else, it's the illusion. And once people start creating fear or false illusions that appear real, that's what fear stands for. They derive an opinion or perception.
That is so true.
Yeah.
Wow, dude, you are blowing my mind just the way that you explain that right now, because you're right. In every space where there's any kind of derived fear-based response, right? And it is a cultural thing. That's what I love about your appeal to the broader spectrum of the conversation of community unification, right? And edification on what this plant could do for you. Man, that is awesome the way you're presenting the information. Now, I have a question for you on the personal space. What was it like bridging those gaps in your own experience to create the team that you have at MONKO to begin that conversation in the manner you're having now?
Well, number one, you got to get in the war room and get people to have a clear mind and conscience. So my marketing team, my partner, uh, you know, my PR team, we all have to get on the same playing field. And a lot of times that's led by me. I used to say we're going to get in the war room or our think tank and we're going to come up with ideas. But how do we take these ideas and make them realities? How do we take problems and make them solutions? And once we write everything out and we come up with solutions, now how do we implement this? What sources? I had a lot of challenges because I don't have a license, didn't have a license. And so I had to go out and say, hey, can I be a case study? Give me the opportunity like you give those with a license. I might have to pay a little more money. I might have to do this. I might have to do that. But afford me those things or opportunities so that I can create this experience for my clients or my customer base. And it took, we've had people come and go. Cannabis is not for everybody, especially in the illicit market. You have to understand that this is not easy. And so those who have stuck around and, my GM, my assistant GM, marketing people, staff been with me from day one. They understand as much as given, as much as required. I give the same thing as they give. I'm not an owner that I'm hands on. I pay my employees $5 more than the minimum wage here, $2 more than the living wage here. My managers make more money than the next one. I share. But I also tell them that do your job. We're here to work. We're here to serve the public. In any way that we can do this, we have to, MONKO has to set the bar. We're the standard. And that's what I'm building here.
That is amazing. That is so exciting to hear, because coming from a space of, developing not only the team, but the message, the motto, luxury with the purpose, right? And understanding the fact that you want to have that engagement of repeatability. Everybody does. But because you're offering something that nobody is really in the space at all. I've never heard of anybody saying, hey, do you want to come and enjoy learning, but also growing as a cannabis consumer, right? Because that's really what you're offering. You're offering the education and the experience. Now, just to dial it in back to let's say the meds themselves, because I call them medication, right? When you're cultivating a product, right, whether it be an edible, smokable, vape, anything like that, what do you find the current market temperature for what it's drawn to the most?
Repeat that question again. I didn't hear that. I missed a part of it.
No problem. What current products are you selling, so to speak, the most between flower, edibles, or vapes? What do you see the clients or persons purchasing more drawn to?
40% of our business is edibles. So Wows, Caminos, those things are really huge. Your chocolate, THC chocolate bars, those things are huge right now. And then you got another, 20% or so is, your vapes and pods, and disposables. On the flower side, we have premium flowers, and so we see, our sativa on the East Coast is huge. We can't keep it on the shelf.
That's a good problem to have.
Right. But, when you position yourself and you put different flower out and you put premium flower out, it just goes. But, I would say I can't keep edibles in the store. I'm continuously having, to order edibles and replenish those. So that's a huge factor.
See, and that's important to discuss too, because, and even in a luxury space, to hear that edibles is really, what's hitting its mark. And also because to me, I find edibles to be, the best bang for the buck. not just joking here, but it really does provide the most for the dollar amount. Of course, in California when it was Prop 215, there really wasn't a control or a standard of milligrams and all that different stuff. So one cookie could be easily like 1,000 milligrams. What type of range are you guys looking at out there?
Well, we try to stay, 10 milligrams per, being in our market, in our 71 market, we do, going into the regular market, we had some brands that were 50 milligram pieces. And, a lot of people, they were a solid brand, no preservatives, vegan. A lot of people love it. A lot of people who can't smoke anymore, but still need that strong high are looking for those type things. So, it just depends on the product. It also depends on, the actual consumer, because consumption, especially with edibles, everybody's liver is different. If you got a fatty liver, a lot of times it breaks down cannabis differently. A lot of people don't understand that cannabis is a oil-based plant, and how your liver processes it is different than my liver. And how it gets into the bloodstream is different because it depends on how the liver breaks it down. So you actually have to educate people and ask these type things. What are you used to smoking? Is it a vape? Is it is it edibles? Or are you a person who likes to smoke? A lot of times you have to educate them because they really don't know.
That's so true. Like, I mean, I honestly I always find it super overwhelming when I come into a shop space, like, oh, what do you normally use? I'm like, I don't know, flour, but that's usually all I have. Like,
right. So so what do you smoke? Are you indica? Are you a sativa? Are you a hybrid? Are you leaning hybrid sativa? Hybrid indica? What are you looking to get out of? What are you looking to get out of this?
I see. So the conversation goes so much further immediately. See, that's knowledge, dude. See, that's power.
Because now you start to educate people on what they're like, not and what they need versus what they think they want.
Mm-hmm.
And because people come in, I want this, and then they find out they don't want this.
That's so true, especially with different strains. Like if it's a couch locky strain, and your buddy loves it, right? But you do it, and it gives you a panic attack because you don't feel like you're in control. Like that's
you're
so
not Daddy,
true.
Though. Daddy's been smoking for 15 years. You just started smoking last week.
It's like it's gonna take a little bit. Relax. It's a learning curve. Yeah.
Right. Betty tolerance is high. Betty smokes 3-4 days a week.
Good luck with keeping up. Yeah.
Exactly. So the reality of the fact is that people have to understand and don't get caught up in the commercial side of cannabis. The rap music, all these, YouTube videos and all this other people, because then you end up on a suicide mission because you listen to the masses versus listening to your body.
Exactly. I've had that happen before. Yeah.
That's not how this works.
Yeah. See, that's such a smart way to say it too.
This is why education is very important. And this is why I tell my staff, inform people with the right message and the right education. Therefore, they can get the right product. That's why we have a high retention rate.
Because you're building that rapport and trust, especially with your customer base. See, and that's the keys, honestly, to all the secrets of the market. Honestly, you keep it that way, you're just gonna win and keep winning. See, this is such an exciting conversation for me, especially right now in the space of cannabis. Not just as a consumer, but as a person that really enjoys the market and what's developing and how and why. And you're there in Washington, D.C. It's one of the most political places to be. Next question I have for you is what do you see the market within DC changing into and developing in? Is it a good place? Is it a bad place? Is it a stressful place? Is it up in the air?
Well, as I say, DC presents its own set of challenges because it's a territory and it's an 8.8 square mile territory. I am hopeful in that we're going in the right direction. I think rescheduling could be huge. Um, there's so many factors, and without getting into the politics, that why rescheduling needs to happen. Actually, descheduling needs to happen in cannabis. I think overall, if we rescheduling will also change a lot of minds of people because then the perception of cannabis as a Schedule One drug will be no longer what most people understand as that negative. They'll see it behind the drug counters in a CVS or a Walgreens eventually. But it also take the stigma and stitch off of cannabis into its deschedule. It'll help. Let me say that. It won't. And I think, our challenges here are, continuing to, number one, we got to continue to inform the community of these changes and why these changes are necessary. Number two, we have to be more visual in the cannabis space as cannabis owners to let the community know why cannabis is acceptable, why that 18-year-olds can't wait to turn 21 to walk in a dispensary versus walking in a liquor store. Number three, most importantly, is that we have to continue to combat with the communities and be alliance with these communities that fear not only cannabis, but what's going to happen if I smoke a joint? Am I going to get arrested? All these things are very important. So as we continue to push for a better DC, a better industry, we have to continue to make awareness and education that go hand in hand. And I think if we can do these things, that we can solve a lot of problems here in the district. I think that what's unique about DC, as I mentioned early, is that it can't become saturated. It's just not enough real estate for it.
That is so true. I didn't realize how small it is until you repeated 8.8 square miles. I was like, wait a minute. What? That's really small.
Right. And you got to remember, a big portion of that is federal government owned.
That is so crazy.
So the footprint here is smaller than that. So all of these things are very important, Joy, and I think that, continuing to speak to people like yourself and continue to have a voice, use your voice, and get the opportunity to speak not only to the district, but speak to, the listeners, whether on the East Coast, Midwest, West Coast. It's very important that people understand why I say luxury with a purpose, why we're in a niche, why we brand, why we market the way that we do. Because education is very important, but your experience is very important. You just said you've been smoking for a while. You haven't been into a store like a MONKO.
No, never. That's why,
Right.
like, even looking at the pictures, I'm like, dude, it puts me at ease. Like, just looking at the pictures, like, I like to feel like I'm not going to be rushed. Like, there's not a billion people, that it's not so much about the turnaround as much as it's about the repeat customer, and that positive experience. So me being a different type of consumer, I very much look for stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, the shakeout of anything is, how do we continue to weed out the bad players, right? And we know in every market, in every industry, you have bad players. But cannabis has such a stitch and stigma is that it sticks out like a sore thumb because I told you so,
Yeah.
right?
The I
And
told
and
you
and,
so's
and
can't
that-
wait for it. Yeah.
right. And but they're the people in Sacramento. They're the people on Capitol Hill. These are congressmen and senators, judges, lawmakers. We have to change the mindset and perception through our purpose.
That is so powerful. That is so powerful.
That's
And
how we win in this industry. That's how we change the industry. The luxury part is easy. It's the perception part, the purpose part, that's the hard part.
it really is, because even discussing things on a level of the way that I do, especially on the show that I am, running here, we discuss veterans in the same kind of light. We want to shift the stigma and the way that things are perceived, and we want to impress upon the society that there's so much more positive things and optimistic things if we were to educate ourselves on a course, like for yourself, the culture behind what it is you're constructing. And of course, the appeal towards doing something in a luxury way, but with the sense of purpose of giving back and educating is huge, man. So solid.
It's a journey, it's a fight, it's a challenge. But again, as much as given, as much as required. And, you know, I grew up on a hog farm in North Carolina. Um, my grandfather, my mother, my grandmother, we were working people. Nothing was given to us. Um, and I remember my grandfather told me, son, he says, the only thing that a man can't take from you is education. And he was speaking about the white man, to be bluntly.
That is so
Let's take
powerful.
let's take the man out of it. If we educate people on how to use this plant, this powerful plant, whether it's in a municipal way or if it's in a recreational way, it's power.
That's so true.
Because we give them the right to feed their bodies the right things without hurting themselves. And I'm going to say this to you. About 2 months ago, I sat down with a psychiatrist who was telling me that she was treating young kids, 15, 16-year-old kids who lost their neurological functions, mainly their bowel movements. They couldn't control them because they start smoking 37, 38% THC at a young age.
Holy shit.
And she was picking my brain and I was picking her brain because I was fascinated. I'd never heard this before.
I've never heard of it either.
And so in talking to her, it enlightened me to make sure that number one is that, again, we got 15, 16-year-olds, they can't, 13, they can't wait to smoke a joint, but they don't know what they're smoking.
Yeah,
I can tell you
that doesn't sound like weed.
harsh.
That does not sound like weed. Yeah.
But it was marijuana
Wow.
because their brain had your brain is still growing at that age.
Yeah.
Your body is still developing. And then I've had horror stories here where people thought they were smoking weed and they were smoking K2 and they end up killing somebody because they tripped.
Shit, dude. See, I didn't know K2 does that either.
Yes. We have something here in D.C. in certain parts of the city. They call them K2 parks. You can walk in certain areas and you would think people are dead. They're on the ground just laying there in a zombie mode.
And that's from K2?
That's from K2.
Jesus. I see, this is the stuff that I really don't know anymore, because I know that everything's changing, and with everybody's conversation with fentanyl and everything else that's out there, it's scary enough to
And that's just another story within itself with the fentanyl, the lacing cannabis, and you know,
exactly.
that's a whole different story.
It is. Well, it is, and then it's not, because it's scary enough to be like, well, how do I determine what the real stuff is and what the real stuff isn't? What is K2, right? Like, how do I know it's not dusted with the fentanyl or narfentanyl or
Well,
carfentanil? And
here's the problem: most kids are followers and they're not leaders,
that's true.
and they don't understand. Just because the next person smoke it, you don't know where it came from. You don't know who sold it to them.
You don't know
These
how
kids are
powerful
so
it is. Yeah, I
they
mean, even at that,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. And most of them are not smart enough to ask these questions.
See, and that's so important, because, like, even as we're discussing it, in the back of my head, I'm like, so is the drug problem really just an ignorance problem? I mean, really, at the end of the day,
It is a misinformed problem, whether you
yeah,
want to say it ignorance, but it's misinformed.
yeah. See, that's actually even better, because being dr- see now my brain's going towards a different. So being actually conditioned to thinking that this thing is that thing is, yes, you're right. It's being misinformed, not just being ignorant, huh? Shit. But then having these conversations with gentlemen like yourself, right? That's in the positive space of taking this plant, cannabis, right? In developing not just a brand, but the education behind it with MONKO. And then having that whole experience of purchasing, being engaged and educated at the same time, the same location, you can't miss. Because I know for a fact that's got to be one of the questions you get from people coming in and being like, hey, I really would like an edible, but I don't want to be throwing my clothes off in the middle of the street screaming that the Martians are landing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
And so the beauty of anything is to be informed about it. When you went in the military, when you went in the Marine Corps, you knew they told you what the Marine Corps was all about. They informed you. You knew what it was about. They did. You might have had some surprises, but at least you knew what you were getting yourself into.
yeah, you're prepared in some sense. Like for
In
my,
some sense.
yeah, I think I was in the Navy, but I was attached to Marines. But I know
Yes.
exactly what you're saying, because even then, like being in Camp Lejeune that's where I was getting trained to learn how to be around Marines as a corpsman. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
You have to learn how to be around the people you are with, and the education starts with that expectation, and then that willingness to be educated. Man, that is so accurate. That willingness to be educated is really what the space needs right now, more so than ever. And you're right there. You know what I mean? So it's like I'm like on my my what's the word here? My optimism and my imaginative mind. I'm like, go over there, have some conversation with a bunch of veteran organizations, stop by the shop, get some nice edibles and smokables and everythingables, and saying, hey guys, you know what really helps me tolerate all the bureaucratic moments we're dealing with right now?
Exactly.
And just go,
And
MONKO,
uh, and from a standpoint of this, a country, um, I'm an independent, but when people talk about how bad this country is, and you've been to third world countries, and you've been to other countries, it just appalls me. Um, Especially for those who fought for our country like yourself. We, as a people, society, and the whole, all this anxiety that people build, they build for places like MONKO. to come and just say, hey, we got you. We're going to inform you because we understand your anxieties. Because if you turn on the news, you're like, what in the hell is going on?
Yeah, it's a really difficult space to even know which way's up.
The news cycle takes every negative aspect of the community in the first 10 minutes. That's crazy. Like nothing positive happened at all today in America. And you wonder why these kids, 13, 14-year-olds, are smoking cannabis.
Yeah, just trying to escape. Shoot.
Exactly.
You
Peer
can't
pressure, bullying.
Yeah.
It's a whole, I'm 52 years old, and I'm saying to myself, God, I thank you that I'm not a child these days. With all the social media, everything that's surrounded around this. So, again, thank you for serving. Thanking you for having a voice in this cannabis space. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you about, MONKO, luxury with a purpose.
Thank you, Terrence. Like, honestly, I'm just taken aback because I could really hear the passion behind your voice and the sense of direction and vision you have for the new space that you've carved out for yourself, especially in the cannabis business, but as an entrepreneur in general. Being able to take those difficulties, those adversities, like we had a bit today, just getting online, which I thank you so much for your patience. Taking that energy and putting it into that positive and optimistic space that where you really can just educate and be rid of that stigma of what cannabis is in certain scopes, right? And in such an environment where I want to repeat it, 8.8 miles of space in DC, which a lot of it is government owned. So guess what? That means it's even a smaller footprint or accessible space. In being able to do what you're doing, coming again from the work experiences and your personal experiences, and taking that with this positive energy and creating just this amazing experience that I really can't wait to experience myself the next time I'm out in DC, which is usually never. But I'm like, man, maybe I need to come up with the reason just to see this.
Out. I mean, you just think about this, Joey. DC is 8.8 square miles. We saw almost 26 million people in 2023.
Oh my God.
Right? Almost 26 million tourists. 25 point some million tourists visit last year. DC can be $1 billion a year cannabis market based on numbers.
And that's probably being conservative there.
Being very conservative here. DC has the opportunity. But I also want you to understand this. My experiences, prison, when I saw friends, people I knew before I actually went to prison that I actually played football with, get 8 and 10 years for cannabis. It just baffled me.
Yeah, the whole space with that is crazy.
Yeah, because if you think about this, and I don't know how much time we have, but if you think about the drug bill of 1970 that was enforced in 1971 that made cannabis a Schedule I drug 54 years ago. It was all about how to take people of color and incarcerate them.
See, and you bring up a very fascinating thing because coming from the real estate experience that you have as well, I'm like, I've seen it with the redlining, and I know that's a hot topic right now as well. But in the cannabis space and in the incarceration space, Everybody likes to start talking about statistics and all this good stuff. But my biggest question to you is utilizing that experience and not becoming a statistic of recidivism, right? What does that energy take for you? Because it's got to be a bit like, for me, just imagining a huge fire of motivation. What is that like carrying it over into the space?
So you said it right. It's a motivation, and also I walk around as the underdog every day. What drives me, what drives my purpose outside of God is the motivation of being the underdog, to having a felon on my chest, to prove those wrong, but also not to prove them wrong, but to allow me to have self-satisfaction within myself. Because before then, I'd never been in trouble a day in my life. And those 18 and a half months allow me to see things that I never saw before, allow me to search deep inside of me. And what I've got out of that as an entrepreneur, but also as a man of faith, is number one, trust God. Number two, trust yourself. And number three, trust nobody farther than you can see him.
That's beautifully put, dude. And that really hits everything that I have left to ask you as far as shout outs, any great last words, or, speaking of words, what you just spoke, like, it really hit me in the heart. Honestly, it really is empowering and just really motivating to hear the inspiration that you have and the reasons why. I don't discuss, my faith as openly as I probably should, but I have the same absolute faith in you, and as a gentleman that, coming from experiences that you have and stepping into this entrepreneurial journey that you have developed for yourself. It's beautiful. It's beautiful to discuss it with you. It's amazing to hear your passion, and just to spend a little bit of time with you. It isn't enough. What I'm saying is I would love to have you on more and more and more to learn more about Terrence White and, of course, MONKO, what you guys have going out in DC. How do we keep in touch, and how do we connect with MONKO and yourself, Terrence? How do we do that? How do we support you?
So I'm here in the district in the Mount Vernon Triangle community here, or section of the city, at 444 K Street Northwest. We're on the handle, our Instagram handle is MONKO DC. If you want to reach out to me, I'm T-White at monko.co. That's T-White at monko.co. Love to chat with you guys. You can Google me, search me, however you need to. But anytime, Joey, I appreciate this opportunity. I appreciate your realness, and I appreciate your passion. And again, thanks for serving in the United States Navy and allowing yourself to sacrifice yourself.
Internet, hello. This ain't all Irish number 4, and then he's a fin number represent that Irish number 6, because he has me for shit.